After more than 6 years of waiting, on the 12th of May 2023, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom dropped from the sky and paraglided onto our Switches. Around this time I made a video giving my first impressions of the game, which I took down after a couple of hours. At the time I thought it was a bit off-brand for the channel, and in a way it is. Most of my content is not impressions based, and there are definitely better people than me at giving first impressions of games. However, as a pure reaction, as a pure encapsulation of the joy I was feeling at the time, I always quite liked the video. It's a little time capsule into my first impressions of Tears of the Kingdom. So often we're caught up in speculation about the future or obsession about the past that we can forget the inestimable magic of when a truly wonderful new game experience captures you. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, there are strengths and weaknesses to Tears of the Kingdom, and if you'd like to see some of my analysis about where this marvellous franchise could head next, there are plenty of options for those. I'll put some on the screen right now. But I thought it would be an interesting time for a little time warp recollection of that joyous first couple of weeks with a new mainline Zelda. So set your minds back to what it was like in May 2023. Let's roll the tape. Wow. I'm maybe 50 hours in and nowhere near finishing. I've literally laughed out loud with delight at some of the moments in this game. I had one proper jump scare near the beginning when I first encountered one particularly terrifying monster. There were times when I felt twinges of sadness and excitement and joy, and not just from the scripted cinematic elements, although those are great too. This is from gameplay. Nintendo's mission at its purest is to surprise and delight its fans, and I couldn't think of a purer expression of that mission than what Nintendo has achieved with Tears of the Kingdom. Look, this isn't a forecast video like normal, although don't worry, plenty of those are coming up too. Nor is it a review in any sense, as despite having sunk by now dozens of hours into the game, I'm still nowhere near finishing. In fact, I'm enjoying meandering through the world and exploring every side quest so much that I have yet to approach a single dungeon. One side character's patience is being tested sorely as I keep bopping in and out of their region, and yet they're waiting patiently for me every time to continue the questline. But I'm just not ready yet. I want to take my time to luxuriate in the sheer wonder of what Aonuma-san and Fujibayashi-san have served up. But as much as this channel is future-focused, I couldn't let the moment pass to appreciate the release of this joyous game, Tears of the Kingdom. This is not a spoiler video, but I will mention a couple of light things that are not to do with plot specifics or gameplay twists, but do touch on the mechanics, some of the locations we knew from previous games, and a few tiny details that people who have only played the first few hours will have experienced. But Nintendo did such a phenomenal job of keeping quiet on some of the secrets in this game, and although that was frustrating in anticipating it, the payoff has been so worth it. I really want to avoid spoilers myself, and I know most people do, and also I think it's a nice way to honour the creator of this marvellous game and ensure that everyone has the experience that Nintendo crafted for them, and I do mean crafted in the finest tradition of Kyoto craftsmanship, because that's what we're dealing with in Tears of the Kingdom. It is an absolute wow. I always get anxious before a game I'm really excited by. Will it be as good as I'm building it up to expect? Will the things that appealed to me before no longer have the same appeal? Almost always with Nintendo, I'm worrying for nothing, and I never really doubted I'd enjoy Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild was such an incredible game for everyone, but in particular it was a major part of bringing me in from the cold in terms of video games, as I drifted away from gaming for quite a long time prior to that game's announcement. The bar was so high for me, but this game is clearing it. First of all, let's talk about the reuse of the world. My head always said it would be fine. My heart said, oh, I want a new world. Exploration of the unknown was such a big thing in Breath of the Wild, but you see, there is still everything to discover. I'm constantly bumping into new things on the surface, and because of the new mechanics, traversal is so much faster, so you need a world of that scope, and you don't necessarily need a world that's completely new. Frankly, it would just be overwhelming if you could soar around a map of this size right off in the way you can with Tears, to say nothing of the fact that, despite having 300 or 400 hours in Breath of the Wild so far, there are still parts of the map I don't remember in that much detail because it's so huge. You see, the backdrop of Breath of the Wild is essential to Tears of the Kingdom's success, and the game is clever with it. There are so many moments that play with and against our expectations from Breath of the Wild. Occasionally I'd come across a location from Breath of the Wild forgetting it was there. For example, I couldn't remember exactly where in the region Tarrytown was. Then I dropped from the sky and landed on the hillside and thought, I know this place. I turned around and ta-da, there was Tarrytown. Amazing. Similarly, I was delighted to see one Guardian left behind while all the rest seemed to have gone. Perhaps there are more, and I won't say which one I saw, but it's part of the decoration of one of the game's locations. I love the design of the Guardians and I do miss them, but I also like that the game is moving on. Similarly, I was excited to return to the Great Plateau. The Great Plateau always felt peaceful and comforting and nostalgic in Breath of the Wild. I remember those hours I spent first mastering the game's mechanics as one of the most special and magical experiences I've had playing video games. And returning later in the game because there were no serious threats, the area felt as close as Breath of the Wild ever came to homey. Well, no specifics, but I found the return to the Great Plateau discomforting in the best way. I was pursued by that terrifying monster I mentioned. I came across another strange creature, and a place that previously had so much meaning for me was very different. I found as I was approaching the Temple of Time, two conflicting emotions. On the one hand, I really hoped that it would be the same, that it would be untouched, that as much as everything else had been altered and made slightly strange and uncanny, this would keep that same spirit from Breath of the Wild, that place of hope and peace and safety. And yet also, the part of me that's a game player wanted to see something different. Well, I won't say what I saw there, but it satisfied both hopes, but maybe not at the same time. Perhaps my favourite example of playing with expectations is the score on Rito Village. The old theme has been remixed in a way that fits the current game perfectly. It's a great piece of music in its own right, but if you remember the previous Rito Village theme, this one resonates so powerfully. Just as with the world, the game is patting very strongly on the beats and collectibles of Breath of the Wild. Structurally, it really emulates its predecessor. I have no problem with this. Ocarina of Time set the template for the 4 games that followed it, and I think the norms established in Breath of the Wild will similarly remain with the game series for a long time, even in games that aren't direct sequels. So far, I've just been exploring the world and trying to open up the map. As early as I could, I did check out the northern edge of the map in the hope that there would be some expansion in that direction to the lands beyond the ravine. Sadly not, although I pretty much knew there wouldn't be. With the Zonai ruins evidently dropped into the original to allow the game for the possibility of expansion, you have to wonder if there was ever an intent to utilise these lands as well, or whether they just wanted to have a Hyrule feeling part of a continent rather than surrounded by water on all sides. If there's DLC, it will be so much easier to add in new Sky Islands or even deeper depths, and so I don't see them ever utilising these expanded territories now. Of course, the big change is the Ultra Hand ability, which is so powerful and so fascinating. It's genuinely so much more fun to play around with these options to see what you can create. It's also made for some fascinating shrine puzzles and a whole bunch of puzzles that are still making me think. Several times I spent a while on a construction and then ended up losing it, but it's fine. It has that thing that Breath of the Wild has, where it endlessly distracts you from one task by offering so many more things to chase up or explore. If something frustrates me or I'm stuck somewhere, I'll just move on and try something different and come back to it later. I've yet to come across many of the mechanisms, and there are several I don't feel I've got to grips with yet, but the ones I have come across are superb. The story is also terrific, not so heavy as to be overbearing, but there's a lot of interesting story material set up. There is a quest that is, I suppose, equivalent to the Memories quest in Breath of the Wild. I wasn't always a huge fan of that quest, and I don't think I even completed it until after I defeated Ganon. But this quest is amazing. I have loved it. I'm still very early in the narrative though, and I'm absolutely in no rush to get anywhere with it, so we'll see how it progresses, but my initial reactions are really positive. The new characters are all great so far, and I like the addition of character bios for the new people you meet. The menus feel a lot tighter, down to little intuitive details like recall being left and ascend being up. It feels intuitive, which is difficult when the controls for the game are so dense. I do sometimes find myself fumbling with games like Metroid and Zelda when you have so many different controls to master, and I still very occasionally throw my weapon by mistake or do something that's not quite right, but this is something I did with Breath of the Wild too. However, I think it's about as slick as you can get. My only frustration is with the arrows. I love being able to customize arrows in the moment, but it really slows things down when you want to use multiple arrows and you have to confirm each time what you're fusing it with. It can be done in a fraction of a second, but it still just clips the action as you're going. I wish you could also have pre-made shock arrows, ice arrows, and so on and back again. Then again, I love the return of bomb plants. What a great design. I'm particularly loving the great range of enemies. Lack of enemy variety was one of the few flaws in Breath of the Wild. This game has so much more diverse a lineup, and some of them are truly impressive. I also love the creativity in their movement, especially the way some of them behave in caves. And there are some new takes on old enemies, especially in the depths, that are really chilling. Okay, let's talk about the sky and the depths. Puttering around the Sky Islands is so much fun. I kind of wish that there were 2 or 3 more islands the same size as the Great Sky Island. Perhaps more will be added before the game concludes, but the sky is so much fun, I just always want more. The depths are incredibly atmospheric, especially through the brilliant lighting mechanics, which really thrill me every time. I must admit, in general in games, I'm not a big fan of dark depths and gloomy caves, but although this is fun in its own right, and I do love the light and brightness of the sky more, the ideas here are fascinating. I've been to the depths at several different points across the map, and the general look and tone of it feels similar, although I dare say there are even more exciting things to discover. I discovered something just the other day, which involved a boss fight that had a great reference back to Breath of the Wild, and that was really thrilling. I also have to chalk up big congratulations to the sound design team, because you really do feel that you're plumbing into a new area. I guess my only concern is that it's a relatively sparse map, but then I also think this is one that's really designed to be using the traversal mechanics that you've been given, to use the vehicles, and to use other techniques to go from section to section. And so actually, although the world is large in terms of space, in terms of maneuverability, you can actually get to lots of places quite quickly, and so you don't necessarily need to dwell in the dark pits, although I'm sure there is a lot to explore down there. Currently I'm shrine hunting, so I haven't seen any of the dungeons yet. I know some people have mixed views on shrines, but I absolutely love them, and I'm so glad they're back. Having these bite-sized puzzles mixed into the overworld is perfect for me, and there are some really satisfying and occasionally quite tough puzzles so far. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the dungeons, but I just am enjoying this game so much that I really don't want to progress it forward before I really feel like I have to. Then there are lovely little details in this game, like the heart containers not appearing but being restored. So often in games like this, showing the character depowered is just a token change, and getting leveled back up feels functionally like any other game. But seeing the blight burn off each time you complete a shrine does feel like you're returning to the earlier, powerful state you were in Breath of the Wild. Mainline Zeldas are such rare experiences, and they deserve to be savoured, so I'm not going to talk too much longer, but I'm going to get back to it. However, before I stop, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's been watching these videos, and particularly those who've liked, subscribed and commented. Despite the channel only being a few weeks old, it was great to shoot past 100 subscribers recently. I really do appreciate your support. Take care, and happy tears.